Hotel horror story number 1. The room wasn't on the floor plan. Fall 2019, Grayfield, Illinois. It happened in the fall of 2019, during what was probably the lowest point of my life. I had just gone through a brutal divorce. After 8 years of marriage, I found out my wife had been cheating on me, with one of my coworkers, no less. It hit me like a truck. My therapist told me I needed space, time away from my apartment, from the office, from everything. So I left. No GPS, no destination. I threw some clothes in a duffel bag, got in my car, and just drove west. The only plan was to disappear for a while. I remember it was late September. That strange in-between time when the leaves haven't fully turned yet, but the air has already shifted. Cold mornings, long shadows. I ended up in a small, quiet town called Grayfield, one of those forgotten places you can barely find on a map. There was a main street, a movie theater from the 60s, and 2 diners across from each other. I needed a place to sleep, and that's how I found Harper Inn, a red brick hotel at the edge of town, with a faded sign that read, "Established 1889. It looked old, but charming. Vintage. The man at the front desk looked half asleep when I walked in. Mid-50s, graying mustache, thick-rimmed glasses. He barely glanced up before handing me a room key. An old plastic card, but the envelope had 312 scribbled on it in pen. "3rd floor, end of the hall, left side," he mumbled. I took the elevator, past a dozen identical hotel room doors, until I reached mine. Room 312 was strange from the start. The door wasn't like the others. It wasn't laminated or modern. It was dark, heavy wood, with a brass handle and no peephole. The number plaque was nearly worn off. The room inside felt fine. Old furniture, floral carpet, slightly musky air. There was a queen-sized bed, a desk, a tall mirror, and a dresser. Nothing obviously weird, but something was off. It was too quiet. Not just peaceful, dead quiet. I didn't hear anything from neighboring rooms, no distant TVs, no footsteps, not even the hum of the heater. And the sheets, they were perfectly tucked, military style. But the top blanket had a very small crease, like someone had just gotten up. Still, I was exhausted. I showered and passed out. But around 3 a.m., I woke up, not from a dream, but from a sound. Knocking. It wasn't at the door. It was coming from inside the wall. 3 sharp knocks. A pause. Then 2 more. 3. Pause. 2. Like a code, or a pattern. I sat up, heart pounding. I pressed my ear to the wall. Silence. Then a soft scratch. I moved the nightstand, checked the wall, the air vent. Nothing. And when I turned back toward the mirror, I froze. In the reflection, there was someone standing behind me. My breath caught in my throat. I spun around. No one. I looked back at the mirror, empty. But I had seen it. A human figure. Pale. Still. Terrified, I rushed out into the hallway. The door shut behind me on its own. I didn't even touch it. I headed straight for the lobby. The desk was empty. The lights dimmed. I waited. Eventually, a woman appeared, thin, elderly, knitting something dark in a chair behind the desk. Her eyes didn't move when I asked, "Is there anyone else staying on the 3rd floor?" She finally looked up. "If you're in 312, she said slowly, "you're the only guest up there. We haven't used those rooms in years." My blood ran cold. "I was just there," I said. "I'm in that room right now." She tilted her head slightly. "Room 312 doesn't exist anymore." I just stood there, frozen in the lobby, staring at the old woman. My brain refused to accept what she had said. Room 312 doesn't exist anymore. But I just checked in. A man gave me the key. He told me to go to 312. I insisted. She kept knitting. her hands moving in slow robotic loops. There hasn't been anyone working nights here for a long time. I've been the only one on staff this week. The silence in the lobby felt thick, heavy. I couldn't breathe right. I turned around and walked quickly back up the stairs. The elevator suddenly felt wrong, like something that might close and never open again. On the third floor, I went all the way to the end of the hallway where my room had been just hours ago. But now, there was no door. Just a blank, beige wall where room 312 used to be. No scratches, no marks, no signs that a door had ever existed. I walked the length of the hallway, back and forth, panic rising in my chest. I checked my phone. I had taken a photo earlier of the emergency floor plan near the elevator. I pulled it up. On the map, there was no room 312. The rooms stopped at 311. In the space where 312 should have been, the map labeled it Maintenance Closet. I stared at the image, heart racing. I felt like I was unraveling. I checked my reservation history. No Harper Inn. I checked my email confirmation. It was gone. My phone had no record of the booking. No calls. No location history for Grayfield. I rushed back to the lobby and demanded answers. I told the woman everything. Her face turned pale. You said someone gave you a key to 312. Yes. A man. Mustache. Gray hair. Glasses. She reached slowly under the counter and pulled out a faded black and white photograph. Was it him? I looked at the photo. It was the man. That's Frank, she said. He used to run the front desk, but he passed away in 2004. I felt the blood drain from my face. My hands were shaking. I have to go. Wait, she said. Don't leave through the front. What? Go out the side door, please. I didn't ask why. I bolted out the side door and didn't look back. The next morning, after a sleepless night in my car at a rest stop, I drove back to Grayfield. I needed to see it again, to prove to myself I hadn't lost my mind. But when I got to where Harper Inn had stood, it was gone. In its place was a chain-link fence surrounding a gravel lot. I walked up to one of the construction workers and asked what had happened to the old hotel. He looked confused. There's been nothing here for years, he said. They tore down the old mental hospital back in 2006. No, it was a hotel. Red brick, Harper Inn. Never heard of it. He walked off, leaving me standing in the cold. I looked down. Right at my feet, half buried in the dirt, was a chunk of old wood. Dark red, weathered, faded brass screwed into it. The number 312, barely visible. Hotel horror story number 2. Someone slid a note under my hotel door. Winter 2022, Northern Michigan. I remember the exact date. January 14th, 2022. I was on a solo road trip across the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, chasing solitude and snow for a week-long break from my job as a graphic designer in Chicago. I'd been through a rough winter mentally, and the idea of sitting by a fireplace with a book in a quiet hotel seemed like the perfect escape. After 7 hours of driving through dense woods and icy backroads, I finally pulled into the parking lot of a small, rustic-looking hotel called Lake Pine Lodge. The place was covered in snow, almost too perfect. Wooden siding, dim yellow lights glowing behind frosted windows, and a carved sign with pine trees on it. It looked peaceful, safe. The woman at the front desk had a warm smile, but moved stiffly, like she'd been standing there too long. "You're in room 108, she said, handing me an actual metal key on a wooden tag. End of the hall. No other guests on that side right now, so it'll be quiet. Great, I thought. Just what I wanted. The room was cozy, with old wood paneling and a small electric fireplace. No TV, no phone. Just a bed, a chair, a window facing the lake, and silence. I unpacked, took a hot shower, and planned to crash early. But right around 10:41 p.m., something happened that changed everything. I was reading, half asleep, when I heard a soft shh against the carpet, a sliding sound from just outside the door, then a slight tap. I got up and checked the peephole. No one there. But when I opened the door, a folded note lay on the floor, just inside the threshold. It was made from old-looking paper, with ragged edges like it had been torn from a book. There was no handwriting on the outside. I opened it slowly. Inside, written in tiny, cramped cursive, "Don't trust the one who checked you in. She's not real." I stared at it for a solid minute. My first thought was, prank, wrong room. But I was alone at this end of the hall. She literally said that. I walked outside. No footsteps in the snow leading away from my door. None approaching it either. Weird. I went to the front desk, but no one was there. Just a ringing bell on the counter and a dusty lobby that smelled faintly like mildew. I waited. After a few minutes, I gave up and returned to my room. But I couldn't sleep. At 1:17 a.m., I heard another sound, this time from the wall behind my bed. A soft scratching, like fingernails or chalk. I turned off the fireplace heater to listen better. The sound stopped. But just when I was about to lie back down, a second note slid under the door. I watched it happen this time. No one was there. The note came in slowly, like someone was deliberately pushing it from the hallway. This one read, "Room 212. They keep them there." That's when I noticed something odd. There was no second floor in this hotel. At least, not that I had seen. And on the map by the elevator, there was no room 212. The second note didn't make any sense. There was no room 212. No second floor. I'd walked the entire hallway earlier that evening, and the only stairs in the hotel led to a basement lounge. Not up. Yet here I was, standing barefoot on the old carpet at 1:20 a.m., holding a note that said otherwise. I decided to check for myself. I grabbed my coat and phone and walked back to the lobby. The front desk was still empty. Behind it, there was a narrow door slightly ajar, marked "Employees Only." I knew I shouldn't go in, but I just watched a note appear under my door without anyone there. That kind of kills your respect for hotel rules. The room beyond was cluttered and dark. Old shelves with dusty binders, spare linens, broken lamps. I found a staircase in the back corner. Not going down, going up. It twisted unnaturally, like it hadn't been used in decades. Every step creaked, and the air grew colder the higher I went. At the top, a metal door with peeling green paint. No handle, just a push plate. I shoved it open. A hallway stretched ahead, dimly lit by a single flickering bulb. It looked wrong. Everything was slightly off. Too narrow, the ceiling too low. Faint buzzing filled the silence, like old fluorescent lights. Along the wall were doors with faded brass numbers, and there it was, room 212. I hesitated. Every part of me screamed to leave, but I had to know. The door wasn't locked. It creaked open on its own, revealing a room that smelled of mold and wet fabric. Dust hung in the air like smoke. The furniture was old, really old, like 1960s motel room decor that had never been touched. And in the middle of the room was a chair facing the window. Someone was sitting in it. I froze. My breath caught in my throat. The figure was motionless. I couldn't see their face, only wisps of gray hair and the shape of shoulders hunched forward. "Hello," I whispered. Nothing. I stepped closer, slowly, each footstep crunching the dusty carpet. My flashlight beam trembled in my hand. I reached the chair and walked around to face them. It was a man, or had been. His skin was gray-blue, sunken. His mouth open in a silent scream. His eyes were gone, just two dark pits. A smell hit me, like rot and cold earth. And in his lap, a note. I didn't want to read it, but I did. You saw too much. Room 108 is theirs now. I ran. Back down the stairs, through the office, into the lobby. But when I turned the corner into my hallway, I stopped dead. The hallway was different. The carpet was soaked. The lights were flickering. My room, 108, had its door wide open. Inside, everything was gone. No bags, no coat, no signs I'd ever been there. And on the bed sat the same woman who checked me in, only now her face was wrong. Her skin was stretched too tight, her mouth too wide. She smiled. "We've been waiting." I turned and bolted down the hall, through the lobby, out into the snow barefoot. I didn't stop running until I reached my car. The hotel. It wasn't there the next morning. Not on the map. Not in real life. The area where it stood was just a patch of frozen trees. The road signs didn't match what I remembered. But in my coat pocket, I still have the first note. "Don't trust the one who checked you in. She's not real." Hotel Horror Story 3. The staff kept asking if I was still alone. Spring 2021, Seattle, Washington. It happened in April of 2021, during a solo business trip to Seattle. I was staying at a boutique hotel downtown, a trendy little place called the Palomar that had exposed brick walls, handwritten welcome notes, and espresso machines in every room. It was the kind of place that tried hard to feel personal. I'd been there once before. Nothing strange, which is why I chose it again. This time, though, I arrived late. My flight had been delayed twice, and by the time I got to the hotel, it was past midnight. The lobby was empty except for one staff member, a young guy with a wide smile and perfectly combed hair. He greeted me with a weird kind of excitement. "Mr. Weller, welcome back." I blinked. Yeah, good to be here." He handed me my key card and tilted his head. "Still alone this time?" I paused. "Still." "Never mind," he said quickly. "You're in room 504. Elevators to your left. Sleep well." I chalked it up to small talk. Maybe he was just being friendly. The room was exactly as I remembered. Clean, stylish, and quiet. I threw my bag down and crashed into bed without even unpacking. I didn't sleep well. Maybe it was the jet lag, maybe just the usual travel anxiety. But around 3:40 a.m., I was jolted awake by a sound. The room phone was ringing. I reached for it, confused. Who calls a hotel room in the middle of the night? "Hello," I mumbled. There was silence. Then static. Then a voice, low and whispery. "Are you sure you're alone in there?" I sat straight up. "Who is this?" Click. I called the front desk. It rang 7 times before the same guy from check-in picked up. "Front desk. Someone just called my room," I said. "Some kind of prank." Creepy whispering. There was a pause. Then he said, "We didn't make any calls, Mr. Weller, and our system shows no one else on your floor tonight. Just you." I hung up. The room felt colder, the kind of cold that seeps into your spine. I got out of bed and checked the closet, the bathroom, even under the bed. Nothing. But when I walked back to the desk, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. My suitcase was open. I hadn't touched it since I arrived, but now my clothes were disturbed, like someone had been rifling through them. I checked for my wallet, my laptop, my ID. All still there. But at the very top of the pile was something I didn't recognize. A small red origami bird, folded perfectly and resting on my t-shirt. I didn't touch it. The next morning, I went down to the lobby. The same guy was there. "I need to ask," I said. "That phone call last night, was that a prank from the staff? Some kind of creepy hotel gimmick?" He looked genuinely confused. "We don't do anything like that. And I told you, no one else was checked in on your floor." He paused, then smiled again. "But maybe it was your friend." I stared at him. "What friend?" He tapped his fingers on the desk. "The one who checked in with you last time." March 2019. You were in 504 then too. There were 2 names on the reservation. I shook my head. I've never stayed here with anyone. He didn't respond, just stared for a long moment, and then said, "Still alone this time then?" I couldn't shake it. That guy at the front desk wasn't just wrong. He was confident. Too confident. He claimed I had stayed in room 504 with someone else 2 years ago. March 2019. I checked my email, my receipts, my travel logs. Nothing. I'd only ever stayed there once, alone. I would have remembered bringing someone with me. I would have remembered any of what he was describing. But now there was this strange overlap. The red origami bird, the phone call, the open suitcase. Was I forgetting something? I took the elevator back up to my floor and stepped into the hallway. It was quiet. I was still the only one checked in, supposedly. When I reached my door, I noticed something stuck to the outside. A sticky note, perfectly centered on the peephole, written in the same neat, slanted handwriting as the origami bird. "You said you'd never come back." I felt an electric jolt through my chest. I looked both ways. Hallway was empty. I went inside. The air felt wrong now. Thick, heavy, like something had settled in the room since I left. I opened my suitcase again. The red bird was gone. That night, I tried to stay awake, but drifted off sometime around 2 a.m. What woke me was the closet door creaking open. I hadn't touched it. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight. Inside the closet was a man's suit, not mine, dark gray, hanging perfectly like someone had just taken it off. And beneath it, on the floor, a pair of polished black shoes I'd never seen before, facing out. It looked like someone was standing there a second ago and had just stepped out of the clothes. I slammed the closet shut. My heart was hammering. I checked the hallway. Still no one. I called the front desk again. This time, a different voice answered. A woman. Calm. Monotone. "Front desk. Hi. Someone's been in my room. There's stuff that wasn't there before. Someone left a note on my door." Another pause. Then she said, "There's no guest by that name staying in room 504. I froze. "What? You must be mistaken," she added. "I am in 504. I checked in yesterday. Look, my name is..." Click. The line went dead. At that point, I was done. I grabbed my things and headed for the elevator, but when I pressed the button for the lobby, it took me to the second floor instead. The doors opened onto darkness, pitch black. I hit the button again. The elevator didn't move. Then I heard it, footsteps coming from the hallway ahead. Slow, deliberate, and then a voice. "You're not supposed to be here without her." I backed into the elevator, mashing every button. The doors finally closed. When I got to the lobby, I bolted past the front desk. No one was there, and into the street. I didn't stop running until I reached another hotel several blocks away. The next morning, I returned to the Palomar with 2 uniformed officers. I told them everything. The hotel was there. Normal. Too normal. They checked the system. There was no record of me checking in. No room 504. That room didn't exist. The 5th floor was under renovation, had been for 2 years. The whole floor was sealed off, empty and dark. There were no cameras showing me entering or exiting that floor. The hotel manager insisted. That floor hasn't been used since early 2019. There was an incident. When I pressed for more, she wouldn't say. I still don't know what happened in room 504. But sometimes, when I'm alone at night, I find another red origami bird, folded perfectly, tucked somewhere it shouldn't be, waiting.